Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Hult's latest episode of Expert Talk, where we take deep dive into the ideas, people, and innovations shaping the future of business. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. My name is Adam, and I'm current master student here at Hult studying business analytics. And like many of you listening, I'm navigating this high-pressure world we live in today, which is why today's focus is so critical, and it's entrepreneurial mindset. Joining me is Professor Henrik Totterman, Professor of Entrepreneurial Management here at Hult. Professor, can you start by telling our audience a bit about your background and perspective about what is your mission in shaping the next generation of entrepreneurs here at Hult?
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here. I could start from kind of my background thinking about my origins in Finland in Northern Europe. And I was born into a family which was highly entrepreneurial and still is today. My mother was the one who was carrying the flag of entrepreneurship. She was the fourth generation of entrepreneurs in her line of family. So when I started my company at the age of 19, that made me the fifth generation of entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurship kind of for me can be defined as a company or organization. But to me, entrepreneurship is so much more than that. It's actually precisely like you kind of indicated. It's really indeed a mindset, and it's a way for us to kind of think about how we act and behave. And especially, of course, when we look on the current kind of times, things are not straightforward always, not linear, quite disruptive times. That's when entrepreneurial management and kind of a mindset comes into play, and it allows us to kind of look for opportunities, but also needs and problems that needs to be addressed. So when you look on my way to approach entrepreneurial management, if you ask anyone on campus or anywhere else for that matter, anyone who knows me, they will know that at some point in time, Henrik will phrase something like this: fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. And when we fall in love with the problem, then typically we also kind of find ways that it can be solved. So actually solving problems is not the problem. The real problem is to identify problems worth to be solved in the first place. And that's really kind of how I approach that topic in my classes, for example.
Thank you so much, and I could not agree more. So before we jump in, just quick reminder for everyone that this session is being recorded. So if you need to leave at any point, you'll be able to access the full conversation afterwards. So to kick things off, it would be great to set the stage and give our audience sense of what we mean when we talk about entrepreneurial mindset. So, Professor, what makes the entrepreneur mindset so critical for driving business growth and innovation today?
Yes, it kind of goes back a little bit to what I said earlier. So we think about the world we live in today. We live in a world which is kind of bound to be in constant change. I often refer in my class to my great grandfather who started a company in 1905. And even he was looking on the world through the lens of things will change and customer needs will change. So you need to kind of adapt to those. But I think in 1905 compared to 2025 or 2026, the world has kind of shifted drastically. So my kind of learning when I took a master's program hovered around change management and in that way kind of building the future of the company. Today, I think we need to kind of define ourselves as being in constant change. And as a company, you kind of need to constantly adapt yourself to the customer needs, but of course also to the surrounding environment. And the only way to do that is to stay very curious and of course adapt and hopefully also being able to be proactive because we know something that others don't know about. So in that sense, kind of proactivity can be really an important asset as well. And I think right now we talk a lot about AI and how AI is going to be revolutionizing everything. And I think AI is a great tool for us as entrepreneurs and those who want to kind of carry an entrepreneurial mindset. But we also need to remember that AI is very much looking on data that has been collected and then analyzed. So kind of it's really good at analyzing the kind of the mirrored picture of the world and the past, but it's not as effective to kind of help us look into the future and predict what's coming next. So that's where I think an entrepreneurial mindset needs to build on many different assets and many different sources. AI is one of them, but it can't be the only source of information. We also need to look at the real world as it's happening and predict it and try to understand where it's going next.
Yeah, and building on that, like the current market trends, like as you mentioned, the AI, we are seeing the entrepreneurs are now living in incredibly vibrant era with so many innovations happening right now thanks to the AI. So where do you predict the greatest market opportunities lies in, and what specific trends should our audience be monitoring?
Yeah, I think it's of course a multifaceted question, and I think opportunities can emerge in the most interesting areas. I think first of all we need to realize that AI as a field, if you could look on that specifically, kind of is right now an investment target rather than a target for returns. So there are very few companies who solely are in AI making a lot of money right now. So I think for me at least, AI is a part solution. So we need to kind of find the problem and then what is the best way to solve it. And indeed, AI can be kind of part of that. If I look on many of the kind of trends around what I work with, I kind of start from net positivity, and I try to identify almost industry agnostically what are the different industries, the different areas where we can kind of find opportunities to do something perhaps more sustainably. So kind of think from a green perspective. But very often it can also be more about efficiency. How can we be more efficient than previous solutions? Or is there a way for us to cut out expensive features and create a more affordable kind of solution to an existing kind of problem that has been dealt with but in a more expensive or more inconvenient way? So in that sense, there are a lot of opportunities out there. And for an individual, of course, you start often from problems that you have encountered yourself. So if I look on students that I work with at Hult, often they identify problems in their current life as a student in a foreign country, for example. And we have at Hult some examples of rapidly growing companies in that specific kind of mindset where you solve something for yourself. But of course, also there is in the surrounding environment things. And often our students, they come from all over the world. So they may see in US a way to solve a problem, and that kind of solution has not existed in their home market where the same kind of problem exists. And this is kind of an opportunity to transfer some of that insight back home. And of course, very often in the other direction as well, and kind of taking something from home, a solution, and realizing that it actually works in this market really well.
Yeah, and when you're also like more about the AI and entrepreneurship, like right now, the AI is taking over so many skills, right? And I was wondering if AI can somehow replace the entrepreneurship mindset.
Yeah, so it's if I think about how I use AI, I think it's a really a good way for entrepreneurs as well to think about it. Entrepreneurs need to have coaches, they need to have mentors, and there is nothing like real people out there that you can sit down and talk with. And we're going to talk about that more specifically. But I have a kind of access to both entrepreneurs but also academics, and I will tell you a small anecdote here. A famous now emeritus professor, I was sitting with him for lunch, and he was talking about some research he was still active in, and he was referring constantly to discussing with his assistant Charlie, and Charlie kind of led him to this thought, and Charlie led him here and there, and then he kind of built on that thought through his own kind of labor of love for the topic and research deeper. And then 20 minutes later, I realized that Charlie was really ChatGPT, and he was ideating with ChatGPT back and forth. And I think that's what entrepreneurs should be kind of doing. And of course, the entrepreneurial mindset where you actively engage with an AI bot that helps you kind of refine and perhaps lead you to new directions of thought. Uh, Definitely, of course, when new technology enters the scene, human beings have always been concerned about how this is going to affect labor and how it's going to affect you individually. And of course, we need to be able to adapt and change ourselves. So in that sense, definitely there are going to be jobs that are going to be disappearing as we know them today. And we have seen that, of course, already. But at this kind of on the other hand, at the same time, there are also a lot of new jobs and opportunities emerging. And when I talk with executives, they definitely have a huge struggle to find certain kind of skill sets, and often relating to new technology kind of competencies and so forth. So I think it's our job as students, but of course also as educators, to ensure that we are adaptive and we kind of change along with the environment.
Yeah, and when we are talking about entrepreneurship, it always comes on my mind that entrepreneurship is very rough path. It requires a lot of dedication, a lot of time and sacrifices. And so I'm thinking about the resilience and also adaptability that entrepreneurs needs to have. So if we explore that a little further, what does it take to build this resilience or adaptability in today's world?
Yeah, and I think we as kind of Finns coming from Finland, we have a very specific word for this, and it doesn't really translate, but it's sisu, and it stands for resilience and kind of this. You kind of are as a human being geared that when you struggle, you don't give up, and you kind of just keep pushing forward with the belief that when we are resilient enough, we will and have grit, we will kind of come through this tough path. And it's I think it's a kind of a skill that resonates really well with management in general, and of course with entrepreneurs as well. And for me, it means that you kind of set assumptions, you set kind of curious explorations, and then you test out things. And things may not work out as you initially planned. And the intent, of course, is to think about, okay, why didn't it work in the way that I thought? And then give a kind of a new direction for your kind of exploration, hoping that you find another path forward. So in that sense, resilience is something that anyone can be resilient. It really fits well for the entrepreneurial mind. And you were saying that the entrepreneurial path is can be rough or tough, I think was the word you used. And I think I agree with that. But at the same time, I would argue that when you talk to entrepreneurs, they would often kind of disagree with you to some extent because they work with something that they have passion for. And when they have passion, then they also are willing to kind of try out things. And kind of in entrepreneurship, we often talk about affordable loss taking. So kind of that you are willing to take steps forward, but an entrepreneur kind of thinks about, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice this because I know that the reward can be even greater. So that kind of mindset, and perhaps that kind of puts us into that resilience and grit kind of perspective.
Building on that, like how entrepreneurs can build this resilience and adaptability, how can also like someone who doesn't have this entrepreneurial mindset yet, can someone actually develop their entrepreneurial mindset? And if so, how? What can they start doing every day to work on it?
Yeah, Adam, you're now kind of hitting a very traditional, classic research topic in kind of entrepreneurship, and the argument is kind of can you learn to become an entrepreneur, or are you actually born with the traits and skills that comes with being an entrepreneur? I'm absolutely of the opinion that anyone can become an entrepreneur, and then of course there are some certain characteristics that certain people carry perhaps more strongly by nature than others. But definitely I've seen entrepreneurs come in all flavors. And when we think about kind of resilience, I would say one of the things that I see lacking and that can be stimulated is curiosity, kind of ensuring that you are willing and also curious about things that happen around, but willing to kind of reach out and trying to learn new aspects. I see that very often kind of among students, that they come initially, they haven't done their homework, and then they try to kind of look on a problem and they try to solve it very quickly. And my job then is to kind of go back to what I said originally. You must fall in love with the problem first. If you don't fall in love with the problem, the solution may fit the problem scoping eventually, but more likely than not, you solve the wrong problem if you don't understand what is the root cause. And I think that comes kind of back to being an entrepreneur. You need to understand the problem scoping. But then, of course, also you need to be curious about new technologies, new kind of models that may be emerging, and of course, staying close to customers and also staying close to competing solutions to the customer problems. Right now, there are so many different streams of technology emerging. I was just as late as yesterday meeting with a tech kind of organization here, well known in the Boston region, and we were talking over 2 hours, like 20 different tech areas, like cutting edge technology areas. And it's impossible for anyone to be an expert in everything. all at once. But I encourage to be curious about everything, so you have a little bit of a feel of what's going on, and then kind of specializing in those areas where you think you kind of find you have competence, or it's an area that could actually help you solve a particular problem. So in that sense, kind of Boston is a fantastic place to stay curious and stay kind of connected to a lot of different fields of technology, for example, because it's all here. It's like one of the most powerful ecosystems across a lot of different fields.
Yeah, and this reminds me of when I got to Hult, and I was into entrepreneurship, but my entrepreneurial mindset wasn't really developed, and I was struggling with some of the how to approach it. And I'm now thinking about like how Halt's challenge-based learning. How do you think this shapes students to develop kind of this entrepreneurial thinking? What is your opinion about it?
Yeah, so what I love with Hult is, first of all, that we are very diverse when it comes to student backgrounds, but also to faculty backgrounds. And our curriculum has been developed and catered to that kind of global mindset. And the fact, of course, that we are trying to help you kind of become an independent thinker. And with that, what I think is really kind of valuable to think about is how you, again, scope a problem. And it may be in an entrepreneurial setting, it may be your boss saying that, hey, this customer is complaining about a certain thing, and then your responsibility is to dig deep into that kind of setting and understand what it's all about, and then build a solution from there. So kind of independent thinking, and at the same time, of course, really strongly tied to being a member of a team. And kind of like they jokingly say, kind of teamwork makes it the dream work. And I think that's very true. And that's kind of the if you look at the Hult DNA, I think it's very much about we try to help you independently to become a strong team player. And that works in the kind of career setting, but it also works really well for entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship seldomly is kind of a solo sport. It's very much about building a team. It's very much about engaging with different types of stakeholders, and customers, of course, just being one of them.
Thank you. And I'm very much interested into, I'm now about to, in 1 year, I will graduate my master's, and I'll be out there on the job market, maybe starting my own business. And I was wondering, like, how can I leverage this 1 full year in Boston to get most of the skills I can right now and prepare myself for the future and also develop my thinking. What is your kind of advice on this?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, the beauty with Hult in general is that we have our campuses in really interesting markets where there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity going on. We happen to be in Boston, so I think, of course, Boston is a natural kind of path to talk about. Boston has every week more programming around entrepreneurship that we can kind of, put our minds around and attend. So I think prioritization is key. And I love the fact that you are thinking now about what you want to do in a year's time. That's the right way of thinking about this. Sometimes students, they are so engaged in the Hult community. They enjoy the student life, they enjoy the courses. And then they kind of, despite all the encouragement, a little bit later on, they're like, I would like to do something with this. I think defining early what your plans are, and you may have an A, B, and C plan, is great. So let's say that your A plan is that you would like to start a company. So that kind of can become your platform for learning. So you start thinking about all the courses you take. How can they help your platform to be established and expand? And of course, also your networking. You start thinking about, I would like to create a company around this problem. Who are the stakeholders in the Boston region, or even internationally, and especially through your colleagues? You get, of course, a lot of different ecosystems that you can tap into around the world. So you kind of can ask around your student kind of population as well. Who knows someone who has been working on a kind of problem like this before, and that can lead to kind of interesting conversations. But I think kind of defining that kind of area early will help you determine how the rest of the year looks like. So that would be my kind of encouragement. And as late as last night, I was at Venture Cafe, which is every Thursday a weekly event in Boston, free of charge, open to anyone who is interested to attend. And I met an alumni from Hult who was from my class a few years ago, and he is now working with one of the top technical schools or universities in the world on his own entrepreneurial project. Really fascinating to discuss with him, and he's actually coming to Hult here during the fall to talk more about his entrepreneurial project. So in that sense, I've seen it so many times, and I know it works. And I would just kind of encourage us to plant the seed early, because then when you graduate, you already have a platform that you've been building on.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what if someone has entrepreneurial mindset? They wanna kind of be entrepreneurs, but they are not really ready to start something on their own. Should they get the job and kind of be entrepreneurs within the company? Isn't that entrepreneurial mindset gonna get like kind of limited?
Yeah, so of course, when you think about, we call it often entrepreneurship or corporate entrepreneurship. So many of the same kind of dynamics work, but of course you are in a different environment. One could be we could go back to the kind of the struggle of being an entrepreneur. Kind of lack of funding is often for a startup entrepreneur a challenge. You're kind of trying to build all the resources. Funding is one, then you have the human capital you may need, and perhaps also social capital, access to clients and whatnot. So in an established setting, let's say that you work with, I'm just trying out one name, let's say Verizon, a huge telecom company in US. They have 130 million customers, right? So if you are able to build something, a new product, a new solution to a problem that some of those customers have, you don't need to start from scratch. You already have a lot of intelligence on the customer base, but on top of that, you may even have access to piloting customers and whatnot. So the world looks very different. But of course, one could argue when you work in a large organizational setting, you of course also have a frame that you operate within. So someone else will be kind of following your work and of course expecting outcomes. And good companies are the ones who allow you to explore and experiment. And even if nothing commercial comes out, we have learned from it. And then other companies are kind of putting very strict return on investment targets on projects, and they may never even kind of start because they just don't, cut the minimum requirements for a feasible project to be established. So depends, but I'm working right now both in the US and Europe with large kind of companies, and it's precisely about the kind of senior executives in both cases where we work with internal challenges, customer-related challenges, and helping my role is to help the internal teams to actually kind of push forward, really kind of genuinely understanding what the problem is, the root cause, and then creating strategically relevant solutions that will then be proposed for execution. So in that sense, I see this all the time, and I also work with United Nations with the Global Compact. Two topics they invite me to talk about in their kind of SDG accelerator. One is business model innovation, and then the other topic is precisely entrepreneurship. How do we get junior employees in an organizational setting to start thinking and acting more as entrepreneurs within their large organization kind of setting? So I work in this space all the time, both in the startup landscape and in these large organizations. And I think entrepreneurial mindset is relevant in both.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, we always ask this one final question on Expert Talk, and that's, what's your one piece of advice for entrepreneurs in today's quickly changing market?
Yeah, so it goes back to what I said before. Fall in love with the problem, and whose problem are you trying to solve? Who is your customer? Really define that in a crystal clear way. And then you think about, okay, who is not my customer, at least now? And then from there, it's much easier to identify very specifically what is the problem that that customer is facing. And then after that, okay, if I understand that problem and I become an expert in understanding the problem, how would I solve it? What is the value proposition? How does the solution look like? Is it a physical product? Is it indeed a service, or a combination, a solution of these two? Then think about what are the strategic priorities. In order for me to approach and be appealing to these customers that I've identified, in order for me to continue to understand how the problem is today, but also how it will evolve, and then of course also how I really address it with my solution. What are the key priorities? Then importantly, how do I measure my success? And often not only my success, but my team's success. And of course then stakeholders, what kind of requirements do they have on us? And stakeholders could be investors, it could be suppliers, it could be other types of kind of partners and whatnot. Who do I need to have on my team to make this happen? Who should be my partners? What should I do myself for our company? What should others do to complement so that we have our value proposition as strongly in the market as possible? So all of those kind of things come to play when I think about what are those things that really truly matter. But I kind of encourage, especially in a very kind of dynamic market space, I really kind of recommend to start from the customer problem and really being the expert in the market, understanding it. The solution part is kind of easier, but if you don't understand the problem and how it will evolve, then it doesn't matter if you have the best solution.
Professor Henrik, thank you very much. It was great to hear from you, especially about importance to really understand the problem that people are having and dedicate time to rather dig deep about it, talk to customers before building something. And as of now, like, it's great time to live because it's so easy to build something, but rather, as you mentioned, it comes to understanding people and their problems. So thank you very much for your insights and for the generosity you brought into this conversation. And I think listening to this will inspire someone and maybe make someone a little bit more courageous to take that first step in the entrepreneurial journey. Thank you so much. And
Thanks.
thank you to our thank you to our audience who tuned out today. If you are curious to learn more about how approaches in entrepreneurship and innovation, you can join the Professor Henrik for masterclass this Thursday and experience it yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, today's session will be available to rewatch on demand. So feel free to revisit it or share it with someone who might benefit it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.